Channel message.
One of the most dangerous places for manipulation to hide is inside a community where a person's public devotion has already been accepted as proof of private character. They know the language. They know which scriptures make them sound humble, wounded, forgiving, or burdened. They understand the power of a soft voice, a public prayer, a visible act of service. Over time, people begin to associate them with wisdom, holiness, and good intentions. By the time their behavior needs to be questioned, their image has already answered for them. That changes the way conflict is received. When the person they harm tries to speak, the room does not begin with the question, "What happened to you?" It begins with the assumption that someone so prayerful, so involved, so respected could not possibly be the one creating the damage. The wounded person's anger becomes instability. Their silence becomes suspicious. Their boundaries are treated like rebellion. Their attempt to give context is heard as an attack on someone the community has already decided to protect. The story usually moves through the room before the target realizes there is a story being told. It travels through a prayer request, a phone call after Bible study, a conversation in the parking lot, a quiet warning that sounds compassionate enough to avoid scrutiny. Please keep them lifted. I don't want to say too much, but something is not right. They have been acting differently. I'm not sure why they're not around. The speaker never has to make a clean accusation. They only have to create enough unease that people start looking at someone differently. A few weeks later, the consequences are visible. People who once spoke freely become guarded. Invitations stop. Conversations grow short. A room goes quiet when a person walks in, then resumes when they leave. Strangers carry tension around someone they have never taken the time to know. No one explains it directly. There is no single accusation to confront. There is only the realization that a person's name has been moving through rooms they were never invited into. That is how social isolation gets manufactured in places that claim to be rooted in love. That is how social isolation gets manufactured in places that claim to be rooted in love. The person who started it can remain publicly graceful through the entire process. They can pray over the very person whose reputation they have contaminated. They can speak about healing while helping others question the credibility of someone who's already wounded. Their image is not separate from the harm. Their image is what makes the harm difficult to expose. The pressure becomes more severe when the person being targeted begins to leave the role they were expected to occupy. There are families, churches, relationships, and belief systems that praise someone for enduring far more than they should have had to endure. They are called faithful while they remain quiet, useful, forgiving, available, and willing to place everyone else's comfort above their own survival. They are encouraged to pray harder when they are afraid. They are told to give more grace when someone keeps violating them. They are asked to preserve the relationship, the marriage, the family, the ministry, the church image, or the peace of the group. As long as their pain can be renamed as a season, nobody has to call it what it is. Then the person begins to wake up. They recognize that the relationship they told to fight for has become dangerous. They see how often their instincts were dismissed, how often fear was mistaken for a lack of faith, and how much of their life has been spent trying to make an unsafe situation feel holy enough to stay in. They may pray for direction and receive an answer that is not gentle or negotiable. Leave. Leave now. Leave immediately. Stop giving this person access. Do not return to the environment that has been breaking you. The warning may carry the kind of urgency that reaches into the future. Stay, and you may not live long enough to become who you were meant to be. The person has already seen the escalation. They know what happens when they try to leave. They know how quickly affection turns into retaliation, how silence can be punished, how concern can become surveillance, and how dangerous a person can become when they feel they are losing control. Yet, the people around them may still try to send them back. They say forgiveness means reopening the door. They say a relationship deserves another chance. They say God can restore anything. They say, think about the family, the children, the church, the ministry, and what would people say? What would people think? That person's safety becomes the one thing no one wants to center. There are people who will pass along messages that were never requested. They will answer questions they had no right to answer. They will reveal a location, encourage contact, or help someone regain access to the person who was trying to get away. Then they will call it reconciliation. They will call it concern. They will call it prayer. They will call it divine timing. But there is nothing sacred about making it easier for danger to find someone. There is nothing holy about returning a person to the hands of someone whose intentions have already been revealed. And there is nothing righteous about punishing someone for listening when God tells them to leave. A warning from God is not a conference call. It is not a family meeting where people who ignore the harm get to vote on whether someone is allowed to protect themselves. It is not a church discussion for people who only recognize obedience when it keeps another person manageable. This is where religious control becomes especially cruel. The people who urge someone to seek God suddenly become offended when that person follows the answer and the answer leads them away from the life others wanted them to remain in. Their clarity gets recast as deception. Their distance becomes bitterness. Their refusal to return becomes pride. Their exit has been explained as spiritual failure. Otherwise, people may begin asking the question nobody wants to ask. What happened that made them leave? That question threatens every person whose comfort depends on the truth staying buried. A church attendance record cannot answer it. Neither can a title, a public prayer, a Bible study schedule, or a reputation for being so close to God. Character reveals itself in private. It is revealed in what a person does with information that could endanger someone. It is revealed in how they respond when they lose access. It is revealed in whether they protect the vulnerable person or protect the image of the person who harmed them. Faith can never require someone to abandon their own discernment in order to belong. It should never demand that a person sacrifice safety to prove they are forgiving. And anyone who becomes angry when a person listens to God instead of listening to them has made their position clear. They were never trying to guide that person. They were trying to keep them within reach. And for some of them, that need is rooted in a life they had to make peace with. There may have been a time when they received their own warning, a relationship that felt wrong from the beginning, a marriage that kept costing them pieces of themselves, a family system that demanded silence, an environment that punished questions, a repeated feeling in their spirit that they were moving against their own path. They may have prayed about it. They may have felt the answer. They may have ignored dreams, intuition, fear, conviction, or the quiet inner knowing that kept telling them something was not right. But they stayed. Maybe fear kept them there. Maybe shame did. Maybe they were afraid of starting over, afraid of disappointing people, afraid of losing the identity they had built around being loyal, faithful, forgiving, or strong. Eventually, surviving the choice became the only way they knew how to live with it. What once troubled them became normal. What once felt like a warning became God's will. What once felt unbearable became the testimony they used to explain why staying was noble. Then someone else receives a similar warning and listens. That person leaves before the damage becomes permanent. They refuse to keep calling fear faith. They refuse to make a prison feel spiritual just because other people are comfortable inside it. And that can confront people with something they have spent years avoiding. They may have abandoned themselves when they had the chance to leave. Rather than face the grief, they try to convince the other person to repeat the same decision. They use scripture, prayer, prophecy, spiritual beliefs, family duty, forgiveness, karma, loyalty, or God's timing to pressure someone back into a life they already know is unsafe. And it's not just because the path isn't right. It's because watching someone else choose freedom forces them to see where they denied it for themselves. They need the other person to stay because their staying only feels righteous when everyone else agrees to call captivity obedience. That is projection at its deepest level. Their unresolved regret becomes someone else's assignment. Their fear becomes someone else's doctrine. Their inability to leave becomes a standard they demand other people to live by. But another person's obedience does not have to resemble their sacrifice. Another person does not have to remain in danger just to make someone else feel less alone in the life they settled for. And nobody gets to use God, religion, spirituality, or concern to force another person back into a place they were clearly being led out of. A warning from God was never meant to become a group debate. It was meant to be heard. And when a person finally listens, the people who benefited from their confusion may call it betrayal. But it may be the first time that person has truly chosen life.
End of message.